I just want to do a quick video on using the original Pod 2.0. It's the, I think it's first or second generation with the legacy floorboard as a MIDI controller. Because I had this idea a couple weeks ago and I did a lot of research on the web and whatnot and came up with some good results. A couple people got it to work, but until I had it in front of me, I wasn't sure what it was going to do. I had been using the pod for effects with the floorboard for a while, and then I upgraded to a TC Electronics G Major, and I didn't have the means of getting a regular MIDI controller at the time, but I had this gear over here, so I figured it's MIDI compatible. We have MIDI ports on the back of the pod. As you can see, the cables are plugged in, so why shouldn't it work? And it actually does work. It works quite well. Just a quick overview with the floorboard. I just turned it on. It's basically all you have to do, and if you have the floorboard plugged in, it sends MIDI signals whenever you hit one of these buttons to the MIDI out. I set the G Major to Omni channel, because if I try to match the channels with the pod, for some reason it doesn't get any data. So as long as I have the G Major set to Omni, it's able to receive MIDI data. So the way it works is the patches, user bank E1, E2, 1, 2, 3, 4 is program change 2, 3, 4, 5. So if you take a look at the G Major, it's 2, 3, 4, 5. And the next bank up, you start at 6, 7, 8, and 9. And it's programmed like that by default. I didn't have to go in and reprogram the program changes. It was just like that by default. I don't know where program change 1 is on the floorboard, so I started at 2 and I put my first patch in at 2. The only thing with changing the program channels is when you switch banks, you have to hit 2 different switches. You have to hit 1, 2 to get to the next bank. If you just switch banks and hit a pedal, it's never going to work. It's never going to change. For some reason, I don't know what it is, but you have to hit one button and then another, and then it'll go back over to that. So like this, I go up, I switch banks. If I hit the same button, nothing ever happens. I hit another one and go back to it, it switches up just like that. So the program changes work well like that, and you just go up the banks, you have program change 2, as many as you're possibly going to need. And I realized that if I go into effect on and off here using this button, I can these switches now here turn into control changes. The EQ works as a control change, the delay works as a control change, and a reverb works as a control change. For some reason, the trem chorus, the channel B, that does not send MIDI data. I'm not sure why. But what you can do then is if I'm in program change mode, or control change mode, if I'm in effect mode, I hit the effect button, I program these. This is my chorus, this is my delay tap, and that I believe is, I don't know what I programmed that, but if you look at this, hitting that, I'm turning the chorus on and off, on and off. And if I hit the C, I program that for the tap delay. It works perfectly to set the tap delay. So I programmed those in. That was relatively easy. I just had to use the learn function on a G Major. I was also able to program the volume as a volume on the G Major. So I can mute the whole system, just by pulling down the volume. So I'll show you. Going down, nothing. Go up, back down. So the volume control sends MIDI data by default. The wah control sends MIDI data if you have it on. So you can switch it on, and then you have MIDI control over that as well. I believe I set this for a pitch, so if I have it on, so that actually starts controlling. I set it up for a whammy effect on the pitch. The on-off switch up here, that sends a control signal, but when you hit it again, it doesn't turn it back off. So I don't know what it is. It's not latching, it's not unlatching. I can turn an effect on, but I can't turn it off. So when I turn it on, I have to switch to a different patch to get the effect to go off. For some reason, that didn't work. So between all that, it actually works quite well. I can control patches, and I have limited control. I can turn certain effects on and off. I have the tap delay, the tap tempo function working on the 1, and it actually works quite well. The tap tempo, that sends a MIDI signal. I can use the learn function, and the G major will pick that up, but after that I get no response from it, so that's useless. The channel effect, again, doesn't send MIDI data, but I press it, and then when I'm in effect mode, these are sending control changes, except for the chorus. So it actually works great. And the way I have this rigged up where I play is I use a Marshall, but I have a Marshall back there with the G major and the pod all in the back room. And all I run to my setup on stage is a LAN cable. I don't have any signal cables coming up front other than my guitar, so that really cuts down on the noise. I used to have an effects loop running from my amp up to where I play on stage, and when you do that, you're running parallel to all kinds of power wires, so your loop is picking up all kinds of noise. So that's the beauty of the Floorboard. I mean, I guess any MIDI controller, you can run a MIDI line, but with the Floorboard, all I have to do is run a LAN cable from the ISO room where my amp is up to the front, and I have total control of the G major, you know, using the Floorboard. I was doing research on this for a good couple of weeks before I decided to pull the trigger on a G major, and I didn't even know if it was going to work, but it turns out it works. And I went over all the functionality, so you can see it works quite well. These Floorboards, they don't make them anymore, obviously. They're quite a few years old, but you can pick them up. You can pick them up for $100 on eBay or anywhere else where they sell used gear. You can always find at least one of these on eBay for $100. That's what it cost me, and I think it's well worth the money, being that not only does it help you control the pod if you're going to use a pod just, but you can use the whole setup as a MIDI controller if you end up buying a piece of rack gear, and then you don't have to shell out another couple $100 on the controller. So this actually works beautifully. I just wanted to make this video because I was researching it for a while, and I didn't come up with any solid answers. A couple people on Ableton forums had tried this and they had some success, but I just wanted to go over all the functionality that it has. It works great. So I'm stoked about this. I don't have to go spend, even a couple $100 on a Behringer MIDI board or even more on the better quality board. I can use this in the time being, and being that it's only being used for MIDI data, the quality of the pod is irrelevant, and the quality of the Floorboard is irrelevant. The only thing that's relevant is the G major, which is a pretty good piece of gear, as many of you probably know. It's pretty old, but the effect quality is excellent. Reverbs, delays are excellent. Chorus is excellent, and even the phasers and the flangers are pretty good too. So it's got a lot of cool features, and once again, using the pod with the Floorboard, if you happen to have that stuff lying around, you have yourself a MIDI controller by default. All you need to run is MIDI out and MIDI in and out from the pod into the back of the G major, and you set the G major or whatever you're using to omni-channel, and you can set the you don't have to mess with the channel on the pod. If it's set to any channel, omni or 1 through 16, it works by default. In the G major's case, I had to set it to omni, but that's okay because the functionality is there anyway. So if any of you are looking into doing this, have had this idea as well, it absolutely works. If you have the old school pod 2.0, that's before the FBV Floorboard, so it's got the little thing here that says pedal. I know you can't really see that, but it's the legacy model, and the legacy Floorboard works great as a MIDI controller if you have these lying around and you need something for that. Thanks a lot.